Welcome back to Season 2 of the ChilliChump podcast. Today I am joined by a guest, Gardener Scott. So Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Gardener Scott on YouTube. That's my primary focus. And I live in Colorado in the United States. I'm currently, of course, visiting the UK. My season is yet to begin here in the middle of May because I live in the mountains and it's quite cold. So this is a good time to travel. But my garden will be kicking off here pretty soon. I do a lot of general gardening. I grow everything from fruit trees and fruit bushes to beans and peas and everything in between. So it's a good opportunity. My channel shows all of that, of course. So I've got a lot of how-to videos, philosophical videos, general gardening advice and recommendations. And I like to show how I do it. And I personally like to focus on the research-based information, the scientific aspect of it, not just this is the way I do it, but why I'm doing it, because it's been shown to be proven, particularly in a challenging environment like I have in Colorado.
And talking about challenging environments, I thought I had a challenging environment. I complain about our last frost dates. Where we moved to here is early May. It used to be middle of April, and I thought that was a bit late. But you had snow 3 weeks ago when you left.
I did, had snow, and hopefully the days of snow are over. We'll see when I return home. But my average last frost date is about May 18th, which means half the time the frost is over by the 18th, and half the time there is yet another frost to come. And so we've had snow into June in my garden. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed and hoping that the last of the worst is gone.
And it's something I think we'll talk about a bit later on as well, but having the snow and having the averages, because it's not too far off our last frost date, but you know, the temperature of the soil, it makes a big difference. And like I say, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Your soil is going to be a lot colder than ours, even if the last frost date is similar.
Oh, yes.
If I had to go measure our soil outside now, it'll be very, very different to what you're seeing. So we have the linear progression of weather here, which, yeah, it's not great in the winter, but it warms up gradually as we get into May. Whereas with you, it seems to be just, you have these heavy extremes of real cold. You know, we have the occasional snow. I don't think we had any snow this season, but you have snow settling down, and you're up in the mountains. You're at a high altitude. But in the summertime, you're having to deal with extreme heat.
Yes.
And having to deal with those two extremes, I can't imagine doing it here. It's challenging as it is for what I do, just growing chilies, which are more suited to a temperate climate. But you grow chilies as well, and you do it successfully. So I'm sure there's going to be many of my viewers that are in a similar climate to yourself. You know, what does the season look like for you in terms of the chilies? Like when do you start your seeds, and when is it important to start your seeds, and what precautions do you take to actually get this going?
Yeah, I wish it was more linear. My season tends to be a roller coaster, and actually all of the season are roller coaster. About the time I was starting my chilies. So I typically start my chilies in the end of March, beginning of April. And so in April, we had one day that actually got up to 30 Celsius. And 2 days later, the high temperature was -3 Celsius. And so that's what's happening outside. So I am forced, of course, to do all of my starts indoors. I can't even do it in my greenhouse because the temperature variation within my greenhouse is too extreme as well. And so generally when I look at my seed packets, the chili pepper seeds will say start indoors 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost date. Well, yes, I'm using that as a guide of when I start, with absolutely no expectation that I will ever get my plants in the ground anywhere close to the last frost date, because my nighttime temperatures this week at home are about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
And that's just not enough to warm the soil. The daytime temperatures are in the 15 to 20 degree Celsius range. But because it's dropping down at night, it takes a long time for the soil to warm up. And so I don't expect to get my chilies in the ground until maybe the second week of June, if I'm lucky. And so that varies from year to year. I can't just pick a date on the calendar. I have to see what's happening with the weather and really base my growing around that. And then on the backside of the season, it's the same kind of issue where my average first frost date might be the first week of October. But a couple years ago, we had a hard freeze the third week of September.
And that's the end of your
And that's
season,
the end
really.
of the season because I'm growing outside. I'm not growing in a greenhouse. But then I've had years where I don't get my first frost until the third week of October. And so that's the biggest challenge for me is I can't set a schedule and stick with the schedule. It's so weather dependent that I just have to be ready for anything, to include season extending, using hoops and plastic to help protect the plants along the way.
So, what tips do you have for people? Because I think I've done a few experiments, and I think one of the most common questions I get, especially people from the UK that don't have the benefit of a greenhouse like I do or grow space like that, they want to plant outside. And I've done these experiments, and my indoor growing is always going to far exceed what I can do outside. There's certain varieties and certain species that I can get a better result, and that's typically the short season plants. But from your perspective, you're growing a variety, not really the super hots too much, but you are growing some capsicum chinenses.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to people wanting to grow outside? You mentioned temporary hoop houses and things like that.
Yeah, the temperature, when I talk about the weather, and that's what I've focused on so far, just because of the varying air temperatures I have, but the soil temperature is really critical. And so that's why I say there's that variability in my garden, because based on my own experimentation and the studies that show this as well, waiting 1 week for the temperature to rise to an appropriate range for the chilies can make the difference in a successful season or not. And it's so common to think you've got your pepper plants, you've got your tomato plants, you've got your beans, you've got your peas, and you're going to put everything in the garden on that first warm spring day. And there's so much more to it than that. And so the beans and the peas might do fine if the soil temperature is at 15 Celsius. But that's still too cold for the chilies to go in the ground. And many gardeners, particularly in my region, that go by a calendar date, wonder why their chilies are struggling and why they're just not growing so well. And it's that initial shock to the plant and to the roots that slows down the rest of the growth starting from that point. And if you just wait a week for the temperatures to make the plant happy, it's going to get jump started and start growing. And even in a short season, a delay at the beginning to get it in at the right time pays huge dividends, because it's going to be fruiting maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the plant that got in the ground sooner.
The other problem there as well is chili plants are resilient. They can do very well in a variety of climates, but they can also be a little bit particular. And what I've noticed is they go into a kind of dormancy when the roots get a bit too cold. And that's kind of the challenge I faced last year and the year before, which is why my harvests were abysmal. We had a bit of a weather phenomenon going on, which caused fluctuations in that temperature. So we had a really hot March last year, unusually hot March, and then April came along and it rained the entire April month, and the plants just went dormant. So to come out of dormancy, I typically find a week of cold weather will mean about 2 weeks for it to come out of dormancy.
Yeah, exactly.
When you have a month of dormancy, a month of cold weather, that dormancy extends at least a month, month and a half, 2 months. And that's what happened last year. It was such a slow start. And that brings back so many problems. It caused insect damage because the plants aren't healthy, they aren't growing really quickly, they can't defend themselves against aphids. The aphids will pick up on these plants in distress and you'll get more aphids. So that was a big problem last year. Even though I have a lot of aphids this year, I'm not entirely concerned because it will rectify itself and there's a few things I can do about that. But last year I had entire rows of plants full of aphids, and that was a big concern. But also the plants stayed small. The root systems weren't growing. The plants were tiny. The flowers started late. It's just endless problems. But I think we both agree, we were talking about this before the podcast started, where the heat of the soil is probably more meaningful than nearly anything else, especially at this time of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on some of the things that could go wrong with the plants, and a weak plant is going to suffer more than a strong plant. And most of the problems that our plants have can be traced to the soil, either the nutrition of the soil, the tilth of the soil, but in this case, particularly with chilies, the temperature of the soil gets added to the mix. And so if the plant isn't stressed at transplanting, it starts off stronger and it can fight off those first aphids that appear in time for the predatory insects to take care of them. Whereas if the plant is dormant, if it's stressed, if it's under that pressure of the environment, it's going to be attacked. And you can circumvent that in the beginning by just having some patience.
And one thing you didn't mention about the soil, and it's a little bit of a challenge I'm having at the moment, is the pH of the soil as well. I mean, it goes off topic a little bit because we are talking about the heat of the soil and that sort of thing. But the pH, it dictates how much of the nutrients can actually be absorbed and at sort of what level. So having, for vegetables especially, or fruiting plants, typically 6 to about 6.5 is a decent pH. At the moment, I'm battling with extremely acidic water, which is causing problems. So that my soil's still all right, which means the soil plants are buffering it, but my hydroponics plants, they're having a bit of a challenge. And yeah, there's so much to it. The soil, it's not just about the biology of the soil, the nutrients and that. There's so many aspects to it, the warmth of it, and the pH. And you know, that brings me to another point. In not only are you, when you're potting up or potting out, because you're planting directly into the soil, you've got to consider the temperature of the source as well as where you're planting to, trying to keep those somewhat similar.
Yeah.
If you go and put a plant that's in 25 degrees Celsius soil in a tiny little plant in a nice, location inside your house, you go and put that outside into 15 degrees soil, it's going to shock the plant. It's not going to like it. And you're probably going to get leaf drop and things like that. But at the same time, you take a plant that's in a neutral pH or a 6.5 pH and you go put it in very acidic or very alkaline soil, same thing, it's going to shock it. So that's one of the reasons I like going from pot to pot. I'm using the same soil mix each time, trying to keep it as consistent as I can. I also do little things because I'm growing indoors, so it makes it easier. I will take my small plants and I'll leave it in the same space as the plants the pots that I'm going to pot up into. I'll leave it in there for a while so that it's all at the same temperature. Same thing with the water. Don't use cold water from the tap, or even if you are using rainwater, don't use it direct from outside. That's going to be about 12 degrees Celsius, and now you're shocking the plant again. So go fill up a jug, put it inside the greenhouse or whatever space that you're planting out into, and get it to the same temperature. There's so many things like that to consider, but man, it must take it to the extremes with your environment.
Well, and there are some tips like for hardening off the plant. So of course I harden off my plants for a good amount of time because of those extremes. I have to get the plants used to the daytime and the nighttime temperatures. But an extra step that I add that I think few gardeners actually think about, before I put the plant in the ground as part of my hardening off process, I place the pot in my bed for a couple days so that the pot is exposed to the exact temperatures that my raised bed are
like a goldfish when you're introducing a goldfish to a new tank.
Exactly. So I'm doing that with the plant, and I'm not aware that I've seen another gardener that really follows that particular technique that I use. And so when I'm watering my potted plants before they go into my bed, yes, I'm using the exact water that they will receive in the bed while they're still happy in the pot. So by the time I put the pot in the ground, it's already acclimated to the exact spot that it's going to be growing, and that helps. And I can't give you precise dates as to whether that gives me an advantage of 2 days or 3 days or a week, but by taking those extra couple days, I think it gives me a stronger plant.
I think every day matters in your environment.
And so 2 days on the front side, again, may add up to a beneficial week on the backside, because I started the plant in as stress-free an environment as possible when it got started. And then from that point on, the soil also, I tend to have an alkaline soil. And so I use a lot of organic matter in my soil to help buffer.
Nitrogen is naturally acidic, so any sort of compost or
exactly,
it's normally quite acidic. Yeah.
And then of course my potting mix is high in organic matter. And so while the pH of my potting mix is not exactly the same as my raised bed soil, it's close and closer than if I was just putting my pots in open ground in some other area. And I see that in my area as well, where I have terrible native soil, and gardeners are putting their plants in the terrible native soil with a high alkalinity and then wondering why they're not doing so well. And so just trying to get that balance of all of those factors, that makes the difference between those of us that are experienced, because we've learned the hard way by doing it wrong, and then making the corrective action to keep doing it right into the future.
What I find interesting, because I see this online, I don't harden off my plants, but I see a lot of the advice going out there that people assume hardening off your plants literally means just shading them.
Oh,
it's not just that. There's so much to it, and you've just touched on a few of those. Hardening is so much more to it. It's acclimatizing essentially. But yeah, most people will consider hardening off just putting shade cloth up or putting it in the shade for half the day and that sort of thing. And yes, that'll help to some point, which I think would probably be quite a big challenge for yourself, because when you're putting them out, the sun must be quite high in the sky at that point, right?
Yeah, in Colorado, it almost every day is a sunny day, particularly in the summer. We might have the thunderstorms that roll through for a few hours, but I'm at 7,000 feet elevation in my garden. So we're closer to the sun. There's more UV radiation. It's hot. It's dry. And if I just had my plants with a little bit of shade out of the house, and then I put them out on that first day, it's like that first day of summer where you're going to the beach and it's a sunny day and you come home with a sunburn. Well, that's essentially what you're doing with your plants. If you immediately go into the sun on that first day, you're going to wound your plant. You're actually going to cause cellular damage because it wasn't acclimated to that spot.
So back to the soil. I'm a big supporter of the fact that the roots are the most important part of the plant. It's the unseen part of the plant that, to me, is far more important than what's happening above the soil. Mm-hmm. Above the soil is an indicator of what's actually happening below the soil, right? So nutrient deficiencies and all that. It's all about what the roots are able to take up and not. I did a video on this recently where light green leaves isn't always an indicator of nitrogen deficiency. It might be an indicator of that, but that doesn't mean that's why they're going light green. You might be overwatering. You might have problems with the soil being able to absorb the nutrients that you're feeding it. So there's a lot more to it than just, let's add some fertilizer. That'll fix it. But with the roots, when you're adding in, and you say adding, if you give it 2 days longer, before you go and put them outside and it's a warmer location, I think that could easily give you another 2 weeks on the back end.
Exactly.
If you consider what's happening, the root system, the quicker that root system can grow, the more nutrients, the more water it can absorb quicker. So if you're stunting your plant and it's not able to spread out those roots, then when a hot day does come along and you go and water the heck out of it, the roots aren't big enough. It's not going to be able to absorb that water. However, you get those root systems big enough, and you can feed and water the hell out of those plants through the season. And that's all I'm focusing on at the moment. If you go, you've seen my plants, they're looking healthy.
Yeah.
But some of them are still relatively small. But I'm not bothered about that. I'm not worried about that because I know that root system is growing. Those pots are keeping things warm. The soil is lovely and warm with the weather we've been having lately. And those root systems are expanding. It's not where it needs to be just yet. And I can see that because the amount I'm watering, how much water is left in the bottom of the trays that I'm using. I can see that it's not pulling all that up. And that also tells me I can go around to each plant, and the more water that's sitting in the tray, the smaller the root system is. And you can tell whether that plant maybe needs to be moved, or maybe it's got a bit of a problem. So there's just so many things that you're looking at beyond the obvious, I think it is, that a lot of people look at.
And that's what's developed in time. That's why an experienced gardener typically has better success, because they're aware that the roots are important and the temperatures are important. There's a common assumption, and I think this holds true for many gardeners, that when you put 6 plants in a bed, that all 6 of those plants are now equal. And they're all going to grow at the same rate with the same water needs and the same nutrient needs. And like you were talking about the change of color of the leaf, plants talk to us. And if you can learn the language of the plants, you can begin to see that the plant on one end of your bed is growing differently than the plant on the other end of the bed. Even though theoretically the soil is the same and all the other conditions are the same, there's something about that spot that is different. It might only be 3 or 4 feet apart, but there's something different. And learning to read the language, and the common factor, of course, is, the leaves are yellowing or they're light green and I need to water more. And often that's a death knell to the plants, because that may be that one plant is on the down slope. So it's actually getting drainage from the rest of the bed. That soil is saturated, and that's what's causing that one plant to have a difference. And now by adding water, because that's the initial assumption, you're oversaturating the soil and scratching your head. Why is this one plant not surviving? I'm babying it. I'm doing everything I need to help it survive, without looking at the entire environment with the roots as one of those focus points. Just try to do the analysis of what's working and what's not.
And as much as we can sit here and tell the listeners how to do things or share our experience, and I think people should listen to experienced gardeners, not just us. There's plenty great ones out there. But there's no substitute for experience. And don't be scared to fail. Don't be scared to try things out. I've failed more times than I've succeeded, I'm sure. But it got me to where I am, and that means that I'm able to see the problems now. If I had a perfect growing, I've always said this, even when I'm making hot sauces, if I had a perfect go of it every time I made a hot sauce, or every time I grew a plant, I'm not learning anything. Because then when something does go wrong, I have no idea what to do.
Failure is often the best teacher, because if you take the time to analyze it,
a bit of patience,
and try to figure it out. I think it's important to have some type of data collection, and you're amazing with what you've developed for your garden. But it can be as simple as just basic information, and a lot of gardeners think the season ends as soon as the plant dies, and I take it another step at the end of the season. We're talking about the roots specifically. I'll pull all of my plants, particularly if I have a series of plants and they've been growing differently, and I'm not sure why, even though through the course of the season I've been trying to analyze the variations. I'll pull the plants at the end of the season and I'll look at the roots, and it seems that to be an invariability that the plants that did the worst were the ones that didn't have that root development. Or when I look at the soil, I see that, the soil wasn't as rich in that particular area, or the drainage. When I pull the plants and some of the soil is moist and some of the soil is dry, those are kind of things to make data points on for the next year to try to correct some of those actions. So I say failure, that may be a bit harsh. It sometimes it's just, it didn't go the way you wanted it to go, and now you've got to try to modify it for the next time.
I definitely do the same thing. I check my roots. It's, I mean, I just enjoy doing it, but it is a great indicator. Um, you know, I've switched around like this year in my larger greenhouse. I have three zones, so center, left, and right. I switched where my super hots were growing because I know that they can handle a little bit cooler temperatures. So putting them on the other side of my greenhouse, they get sun a little bit later in the day and they don't get as warm as the other plants that are on the other side of the greenhouse. So the shorter season plants, they love a lot of sunshine right now. When I did it the other way around last year, I could see the problems. That's when I was getting massive aphid damage in one of the corners because it was quite cool down there, and those plants, they just were not healthy. So having a look at the root system, I was able to see just what was going on. Those root systems weren't filling the pots. All the pots on the, if I'm going into the greenhouse, on the left-hand side, where the sun is coming in from the east, those were getting early morning sunshine and was heating up a lot quicker. And throughout the day, you had these warmer pots. Those root systems were full, absolutely filled the pots. So that's something that I learned from last season, and I could make that switch. So I'll keep an eye on it as well. I might be wrong in what I'm doing with that information, but at least it's information that I can use to get some indication of where I should be going with this and what I should be doing with it.
That's a good point. I have a shed, a garden shed that's on one edge of my vegetable beds. And so that edge is the western edge. So as the sun rises, those beds get the sun just a little bit later. But then as the sun begins to set, those beds get the shade sooner. And I started noticing, very similar to you, that the plants I had in those beds on that side just never seemed to grow as well. And it's because they were getting a little bit less sun in the morning and a little bit less sun in the afternoon, and that meant that they were more susceptible to some of those problems.
Yeah, it's just I love the learning aspect of this. I'm a techie, so of course I love the experiments and I love the data. But it's not just about being able to have amazing plants at the end of the year. That's a nice effect of what I'm doing, but it's also just learning and being in touch with what you're doing. I get so much more fulfillment from it, being able to actually understand it better. If I was just throwing a couple seeds in the ground and hey, there's a plant, or there isn't because it died, I'm not going to get the same fulfillment, I think. And that's definitely something I've learned. Maybe it's as we get older, we appreciate things a little bit more like that. But I think it also helps. If you are trying to grow champion plants, trying to get massive harvests, having that connection, it goes a long way. It really does.
It does. I have a basic philosophy along those lines of what makes a gardener, because a lot of people attempt to grow plants and they might be successful with the plants, but they're not necessarily a gardener until they make that mental shift to want to do better and to want to learn and to want to experiment and then to start keeping track of what their progress is. And that's what really makes a gardener, where it becomes more than just a hobby, and it becomes that passion that tends to consume some of us as we grow more and try different things every time. And so, exactly to your point, that's what a gardener does in my mind.
Caroline, Mrs. ChilliChump, she used to kill every house plant she ever came across before we met, and in the beginning of when we met. She didn't, and it goes to exactly what you're saying. She didn't have that connection. She was growing a plant because it looked pretty, and that was it. And I helped her out with a few things about feeding and why it's doing what it's doing and that sort of thing. And now it's been 4 years now we've been on this property. And she has her own raised beds. She's got her own garden sections, and she absolutely loves it. And she's got a connection with it. She's not worried about the outcome at the end of the day. She loves seeing new growth coming through, and she gets excited because that's her babies. And,
That's right.
And it's so wonderful to see that shift that she's made. Just having a better connection with things. oftentimes I'm amazed she'll be out there without me, because normally I'll have to drag her out to the garden and she'll get involved, but I'll find her out there looking after her plants, and she does a lot of wildflowers and things like that, and she does really well with it. I think she's doing a great job. But it's nice to see that shift and being able to share that passion with someone like that. So yeah, it really makes a difference to have a change of perspective, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I approach my YouTube channel. Is I've got a lot of how-to videos. A lot of gardener channels have how-to videos, but I try to add that extra piece, not only how to do something, but why to do it, so that you can develop that mindset of being excited when that first leaf appears, and the ecstasy of eating that very first fruit in the summer. Those single moments, and of course I've made videos about the single moments that are part of our gardening season, and that also helps differentiate our approach to gardening. Is those little things are really what makes the difference. And by being able to recognize those little things and appreciate each of those moments, at the end of the season, you can look back and you're just filled with gardening memories. And, sometimes it's hard to identify what your favorite moment was during the growing season, because there were so many of them, because every day brings those type of moments. And that's how the passion really is developed, from just growing a plant to, like you say with Caroline, it's something that she is enjoying because she can recognize each of those individual moments.
With what I do, I've started probably 100,000 plants in my life, 100,000 chili plants. I get just as excited today as I did when I first started doing
There you
it.
go.
I remember that excitement when I first started growing chili plants on purpose, because I'd been growing them in South Africa for a while, and it was all about like, which varieties can I buy? And I've still got a couple packets from way back, from those seeds that I bought, way too many, as we always do. And when you get that first germination come through, it's exciting. When you see new growth coming through, when you see the flowers coming through, I still get it today. I love walking around my greenhouses and seeing all that. And hopefully that never goes away. I don't think it will. But
I've been doing this for about 35 years now, and it hasn't even begun to go away. This year, for instance, because I've already started my chilies indoors, and I was expecting germination in 4 or 5 days for the seeds that I have under the lights and on the heat mats, and one of them popped up on day 3.
wow.
And it was just, it was so exciting to see this unexpected plant. And when I say pop up, it was just beginning to break the surface of the soil. But that excitement never goes away for me. It really is something that keeps the season.
So, and while we're talking about this, obviously I could talk philosophy with you all day, but just to bring it back to the people that are listening here, a lot of the folks, I think, have that passion, and especially when it comes to chili plants, there's such a variety, as there are for most plants. Tomatoes are another one. There's so many different types and different color flowers and different type of plants. But with chilies, it really sparks off a real passion for a lot of people. The other side of it as well is people wanting to do it as a business, something like what I'm doing, growing lots of chilies, and understanding everything that you can about the growing side of it, and getting to have that passion for it, I think, is a huge part in being able to be successful.
Oh, sure.
I do consultancy for growers and for source makers and that sort of thing. And when I get a grower approach me and they'll send me a picture of these plants, actually this happened recently. I had somebody in India, and they showed me their chili plants, and they were asking me, why aren't they growing? What nutrients do I need to add? And I looked, and I'm like, what are you doing? It was just in this bare dirt. It looked like sand. It didn't even look like compost or anything like that. There's no organic matter. And all they wanted to know is, like, how do I fix it? They aren't interested in figuring out, why could it be like this? How should I have started things? What could I have done different to get to the stage? Instead of, give me a fix. How much nitrogen should I add? How much potassium should I add? And I can't really help when
sure.
it's like that. I can't tell you what to do to fix it at that point. And not because I don't want to, I'd love to help you, but you've got to understand some fundamentals before you're going to get to a point where you can actually fix this problem. It's a tough one, and it's frustrating because I understand people need to make money and people are doing a business, but there's certain vocations. I think actually every vocation, you've got to have some level of passion for what you do, no matter
to be successful.
To be successful and also to enjoy life. If you're doing something that you're absolutely miserable at, some people don't really have an option. I get it. But when you're growing chilies and you have that opportunity to have 10 acres of fields with lovely chili plants, that can you imagine that excitement at the end of the season with these massive plants? But instead they're just thinking about this is dropping the profit margin. They're not thinking about the fact these are living things. I don't know. Again, we're going into the philosophy here side of it, but I think it's hugely important. They'd be so much more successful. They'd be happier. They'd be far less stressed if they actually took the time to just think about what are they doing, why are they doing it, and how can they maybe improve next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of just throwing nutrients at it.
And part of that, I think, is just a lack of understanding, a lack of education, a lack of awareness of what's involved with a plant. It's more than just putting a little bit of water on some bare dirt with a seed in it and expecting everything to happen. The seed is magical. The seed has everything it needs to create a plant. But beyond that point, we have a tremendous role in whether that plant is going to grow or not. And it's too common an assumption, particularly people beginning gardening or beginning farming, thinking that there is a magic bullet. There is that one ingredient that you can put on your plants and it's going to guarantee success. And as you well know, there's myriad inputs that we have to be thinking about if that is our goal. My primary goal is enjoyment. And so if I screw things up and learn from it, I enjoy the process. And if I try a new variety that I've never tried before and it does terribly, well, now I know that I'll try it again to see if it's still terrible. And if it happens the second time, it's like, okay, yeah, that will probably be terrible a third time. But like most gardeners, you got to try it that third time just to be sure. And so we have a different approach to what's happening, but we're modifying a few variables, sometimes maybe multiple variables, to get that response. And I'm never looking for that magic bullet. I'm trying to figure out the environment. And I'm a lazy gardener at heart, even though I work really hard to be lazy. And
it is hard work being lazy.
Yeah, exactly. But it's doing all that preliminary work and education to give the plants exactly what they want so that next year I can sit back because the plant has the happy spot that I gave it after years and years of doing it wrong.
Lovely story. This chap contacted me, and I can't really mention too many details because we are working on a bit of a collaboration. But he and his wife, they are running one of the biggest chili seed companies and chili product companies in the UK. I've bought seeds from them before. I'm sure plenty of my listeners have as well. And they approached me because they wanted to do some sort of collaboration, and I was dubious because we get these approaches all the time. Normally it seems to be a one-sided thing. They just, what can we get out of you for as little as possible? But I went into this call, I had this call with him and didn't expect much. I was expecting, honestly, not to really like the guy or like the business because I thought, well, it's just going to be some corporate type, And we got into this conversation, and he was truly passionate about what he's doing. We ended up talking for ages, and we were talking strategy. He was interested in what I was doing, and I was very interested in what he was doing. He taught me a few things. I think I taught him a few things, and we will be doing a collaboration together. But I came off that call. Learned two things. Don't always presuppose about people or presume about people, but also, you don't have to be cold or non-passionate to be successful in business, because their business is very successful. There are people out there that are just like me. I mean, I'm running a business, and I'm absolutely passionate about what I do. That doesn't mean just because you have a bigger business that you're not going to be. So it was nice to see that he had that passion, and that he loved what he was doing, and he's constantly thinking about ways to improve.
Oh, good.
One of the things he was talking to me about, so he'll know exactly who he is now, but one of the things he was talking about is the parasitic wasps, because he had aphid problems as well. And parasitic wasps, to buy them here, we were talking about this yesterday, I think it was, it's not cheap. For a small little container, it's like 20 pounds. And for my grow space, that's quite a few containers I'd have to get. And I did. I have got those this year to try them out, but he gave me a bit of a tip. What he's done this year, because he's got even much bigger grow space than I do, instead of buying 20 of these little containers every couple of months, instead what he's done is he bought one container and took a couple sacrificial plants that were covered in aphids, netted them over with these parasitic wasps, and they just populated. I mean, he did that very early in the season, but he says he has way more than he ever gets when he's just putting those little pots out. He's got this amazing system now, which cost him one lot of £20. And now he's got all these parasitic wasps everywhere, and his aphid problems are getting resolved. So, yeah, it's lovely to be able to share those bits of information and just hear how passionate they are about what they do. And it just goes to show that's why they're successful. That's why their business continues to do well and thrive. You can genuinely see just how these people connect with what they're doing, and it's lovely to see. So,
and it does make a difference, and even for a home gardener with just a few beds and a few plants, it's the same mindset. It's still having that same approach to essentially your own business in your own backyard, even if it is for personal consumption. That the approach you take in that mindset is everything.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, if you are doing it for yourself at home, especially with the way the economy is going and how expensive everything's getting, it is a business these days to grow your own vegetables. And business is good if you can grow the right vegetables and do it successfully.
Well, and that's exactly the way I look at it now. I'll experiment. I like to grow new things just to grow new things, like you are growing all kinds of new chilies every year to see what works and what doesn't work. It is important to grow the things you're going to use if you have a small garden, and particularly if you're growing it for economic reasons. And even though you might see a chili on your channel or a chili on my channel and you think that sounds great, if you're not going to really use it and you've got limited space, I would advise that you choose a chili that you're actually going to use, something that's in your diet, something that you might make a sauce with, but something that you have a purpose for. Because I talk to a lot of new gardeners who start losing some of that passion and start losing some of that excitement, because they'll get to the end of the season and they'll grow a plant and they'll harvest it, and then they don't know what to do with it.
That happens a lot in the chili growing world. A lot of people, I'll get emails. It's normally around September, October, and somebody has managed to successfully grow a super hot plant. They've never had a super hot chili in their life before. The hottest sauces they've had are like, Frank's extra hot, or maybe even Tabasco scorpion flavor. And they're like, what do I do with this kilogram of chilies?
Exactly.
And it's like, did you not think about that when you started this plant?
And a lot of people don't. So when I'm advising and making my videos or doing my live stream, planning to me is a critical part of gardening that is often not given the time that it deserves, because you should be thinking about the end of the season before you even start your season. And too often we get so focused on just growing the plant and trying to make the plant happy that we lose sight of, and I've done that before. I've grown super hots before just to see if I could grow super hots. And then I grow them and I harvest. And there is that now what moment. And it happens to all of us. It's just how you decide to approach it. I do a lot of preservation, so I can always freeze it or freeze dry it or dehydrate it or you know,
Well, you do some fermenting as well.
and well, but that's I do something to like keep the chilies viable until I decide what I'm going to do with it as well. And fermentation has been my go-to now. But I've got some devil's brain peppers in my freezer right now because I have plans to make jelly this season, and I'm
I
not
hope I'm
growing.
getting a jar of this jelly.
Oh, I'm sure we can arrange that. But it's what I grew last year, and I'm not growing them this year. But I can still preserve those peppers for a future use, and that's something that I think is something gardeners should be aware of as well, that you don't have to consume everything when you harvest it.
No.
You can have that future plan.
Learning preservation techniques, whether it is just purely brine salting or fermenting, pickling, drying, I mean, that's such an essential thing. I love doing it. I don't know, maybe it's the hoarder in me, but I love storing up the vegetables and having them fresh over the winter. So you saw the amount of corn I'm growing this year. It's probably twice, 3 times as much as I've ever grown before, but I want to preserve a ton of it. I want to have jars of that stuff. I love corn. I love fresh corn, of course, but if you can't have that, the next best thing is your own. And I don't always want to buy the frozen stuff from the supermarkets. It never tastes as good. So, yeah. But I must admit, I don't grow everything that I grow to consume. I have a category when I grow, so I categorize all my plants depending on their uses. So it could be super hot, so it could be hot, so it could be staples. So the staples I grow every year because of the certain sources I use. But I have a category called looks.
Oh,
because you know there's a bunch of plants that are just beautiful ornamentals, and it's still a use because it's something that gives me a lot of joy to see these things, but it's not necessarily something I'll use or eat them. Some I will, some not too bad, like basket of fire. That's a stunning, beautiful looking plant, nice shrubby small chili plant. You can use the chilies. It's lovely on the windowsill. They're not the best tasting, but they got a good bit of heat. So if you need to add something to a soup or something, then there you go. But yeah, the ornamentals, I do grow quite a few of those. And I guess it's no different from growing flowers as well.
Oh, sure. And a recent video of mine was on chives. And I divided my clumps of chives this year to put around the garden exactly for that, for the visual aspect, because I love the chive flower. It's beautiful color.
I've never let it go to flower.
Oh, it's a beautiful flower, and you can eat the flower too. You can actually pluck the flower and sprinkle the little purple petals, and so it's a great garnish for a meal as well.
I need to grow some chives.
There you go. And so I've got way more chives than I could possibly eat, but I'm not growing them to eat. I'm growing them to look good in the garden. And so, yeah, I do that with a lot of my herbs as well, where I let the dill plants fully flower because it has that umbel shape at the top, and it's a beautiful plant. And you're right, the chilies fall into that same basic category where you're growing a plant normally used for harvest, but if you like the way it looks in your garden, and especially when you allow a plant to flower, you're attracting often those beneficial insects.
Yeah, absolutely.
And particularly the umbel-shaped herbs. Those are attracting to predatory wasps, and growing grasses in your garden will also attract some predatory insects. So I go for the diversity throughout my garden, and I do, like most gardeners do, I categorize and I put specific plants in specific beds, but then I literally think outside the box and move some of those beds beyond, or some of those plants beyond my raised beds into the pollinator garden. And carrots are a beautiful plant as well. You grow carrots as a flowering biennial, and it's a high plant, and it's got that umbel-shaped flower that's attracting beneficial insects. And nobody knows it's a carrot, but it looks great amongst all the rest of your perennial plants.
So excuse my ignorance. What do you mean by umbel?
So umbel is like an umbrella shape.
Oh,
and so
that makes sense.
that's right. And so it's It's when the plant sends up typically a taller stalk, and then that stalk has multiple branches of flowers that look like an umbrella of flowers at the top of that stalk.
Okay. Well, this brings us on to a nice topic. What is your favorite plant to grow? And it could be vegetable, flower,
Sure,
anything.
sure. I always put tomatoes at the top of my list. Most gardeners tend to like growing tomatoes, but in my challenging environment, I've come across different varieties. Black Krim is one of my favorite tomato varieties. It does very well in my garden. I love the taste. It's one of the early fruiting varieties that I can grow. It can handle a little bit of cool conditions at the end of the season. And so those are the technical aspects of it, but it's almost always successful. And so if I'm going to grow, I like to have at least something that I can harvest by the end of the season. And that's one of those plants. And there's lots of other cherry tomato varieties that do very well in my region. I can't grow beefsteak tomatoes. My season just isn't long enough.
I've never been able to grow them.
But so when I say tomatoes, I'm not talking all varieties. It's some very specific varieties that do very well for me. I do them every year. I love it, and I don't have to work very hard to do it. So I think, at least for me, back to the idea of being a lazy gardener, if I have to work too hard to get something, it does tend to diminish some of the enjoyment.
It has to taste fantastic to be
Exactly.
able to justify that.
That's exactly right. And so that's why I put tomatoes at the top of the list, because at least in my garden, they do very well.
The most challenging one for me, or the one that I've had to have the most patience for, is asparagus. So we started our bed of asparagus 4 years ago. And if you start them from seed, which is what I did, you need to wait 3 years. You can see that beautiful asparagus coming through, but you can't pick it. And third year in, we were able to harvest it. So a lot of patience, but that is one that I feel is absolutely worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Once it beds in, oh man, you're going to get crops for the
There-
rest of your time.
The crops we grow, of course, always taste better than the market, but I would put asparagus in the top three as to the taste sensation that you cannot explain until you harvest it fresh and serve it fresh. It's nothing like you can buy.
Do you eat it straight from the garden sometimes?
Oh yeah.
Tastes nutty and
It's incredible.
a lot of it doesn't make it to the kitchen because I end up snacking on it.
Yeah.
Oh, look, there's a stalk. And
Yeah.
I keep grabbing it, but it tastes amazing. I mean, I love it steamed, grilled. I mean, there's so many different ways of doing it, but yeah, straight out the garden, fresh. It's stunning. So yeah, there's certain plants. I was going to say earlier, you mentioned tomatoes. The chili community is massive. It's a massive community, and it's a very passionate community, whether it's eating chilies or whether it's growing. But I would say it has nothing on the tomato community. If the people that are listening to this that have never looked into it, go look up what forums are out there for tomatoes.
Sure.
It blows my mind. It's huge, and they are seriously passionate about it. The chili community can have a reputation for being a bit argumentative, to be polite, and sometimes a little toxic when people have their passionate disagreements and opinions. But man, I've seen some stuff going on in the tomato community, and I'm like, wow. But it's amazing. It's great to see the passion. It's not nice to see the toxicity sometimes, but it still means there's passion that's behind it, and I love seeing that. But I think you get that in any community.
Oh, sure.
Cactus growing. That was another plant. When I started growing chilies, if I had had success with my cactus plants when I started my chilies, because I bought cactus plants and I bought chili plants, if I had had success with my cactus plants, I might be a cactus chump.
Cactus chump at this point, yeah.
But yeah, it's but the cactus community and the bonsai community, it's so lovely to see, and it's all about gardening, right?
It's all about gardening, and like I said at the beginning, I'm a generalist. I grow everything because I just like the process of growing, and I just like being surrounded by plants and varieties of all plants. But I have many gardener friends who who specialize, and they are a specialist in growing irises or roses or whatever the plant happens to be, whether it's the chilies or the tomatoes or herbs, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to judge and tell someone that they're gardening wrong because they are passionate about one particular plant. I say learn more, and exactly that, create maybe a little discourse as you're moving further along on your gardening journey, because that's how you learn. I've been doing it long enough that I know a lot about a lot of different methods of gardening. I don't know a fraction of what's out there in the big world of gardening. And often specializing gives you a leg up on many other gardeners because you can learn some of those specific techniques and those processes that work for a specific plant, like chilies, which can be notoriously difficult to grow. Well, if you can grow a super hot chili pepper to fruition, chances are you can grow peas and beans and carrots without even breaking a sweat. And you'll have great success with your tomato plants because generally they're easier to grow. And so that passionate focus, I think, will make you a better gardener overall, whether you're even aware of it or not.
Yeah. I thankfully I've been doing this for what is now 2025, so almost 20 years now. I'm just thankful I haven't lost the passion for it, because I think that's something that I've seen quite a lot in the community when people do hyper focus on something, and that's with anything in life. It's not just growing plants, but I'll see it in my community. People come in, see my videos, and like, wow, you've given me the bug, and they just start growing. They get excited about it, and then a year down the line, something else interests them, and they lose that interest for the chilies, for example. It's just switching hobbies and I've done it. There's certain hobbies, but chilies have always just stuck with me. I think because of the number of varieties, and I think it's probably why tomatoes are so popular, because there are just innumerable number of varieties out there. Chilies, I could never grow every variety that's out there. So there's always something new for me to learn, and there's new varieties getting created every year. So it keeps me interested, it keeps me excited. And I do things like now I'm experimenting with some different hydroponic, methods and things like that. And that keeps me interested in the growing side, because I've pretty nailed down where I am with how I grow in soil. So hey, why not test a few other things, and maybe some aeroponics next year? We'll see how that goes. Oh. But no, I just really enjoy it. It just makes me a little bit sad when you get people that really get passionate about it and then they give up too soon.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is because they didn't see the success that maybe they saw me get. Or maybe they got put off because they bought some bad quality seeds, or they got misled with a seed vendor or something like that. And it's very sad. It's one of my philosophies with what I do in my business. I want to be as fair as I can be. When I sell seeds, I make sure that they are high germinating seeds. I make sure that they're as true to type as possible, because I want more growers out there.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to be successful, because then you get to share in this passion that I have with what I do. And it's like you say, you're a generalist, so you have so much knowledge in so many areas. For me, I am focused on this one little part of the world. But if I can make a few extra chili growers out there, hey, I've done my job. Now I'm going to be happy.
Absolutely. And, in our discussions that we've had in the last couple of days and previously, finding someone that has that passion, even if it's for a different type of plant, we gardeners speak a common language when we get the opportunity to talk about plants, regardless of what type of plant it is. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to find new friends and to find new avenues of discussion. And so, if you can generate one new chili grower, and that person generates one new chili grower, your input now spreads literally throughout the world, as you've seen. And and we're talking hundreds and thousands of new chili growers. And I see that on my channel all the time with the comments I get from the new gardeners who don't even make a comment to me until they've been doing it for a couple years. And they say, I discovered your channel 3 years ago when I started gardening, and now I can't stop. I'm so passionate because of all the successes that I've had, and I get great benefit from that. Yeah, I make videos.
You're leaving a legacy.
Exactly. And I don't do it to leave a legacy, but I do it for that individual gardener, to try to have that one person, and that person spreads it to their kids, and maybe their kids spread it to their friends. And yes, it is a legacy, and my name will never be stamped on the plaque anywhere as a result of it. But that's not the point. It's making the world a better place, because I think gardeners are just great people. And if we can populate the world with more gardeners, then a lot of our day-to-day issues aren't going to be as bad as maybe they are.
And it's not even the direct benefit of gardening and getting some lovely vegetables that you know what you've done with them. It's teaching you life skills.
Oh, sure.
We're going to sound like old fogies now, but I think this world is getting more and more fast-paced. I've seen it I've been in the tech industry for a while now, and just how busy an average day is in corporate life. And what we get inundated with, blasted in the face with our phones, with all that information that's constantly coming at us. It's no wonder that people's attention spans are so low these days. And we see it with what's going on YouTube, and we'll talk about YouTube in just a little bit. But the fact that people don't have that attention span anymore, and it gets more and more difficult to capture that attention, when you do have somebody that's able to slow down, go outside, let's get some seeds started, and having to wait 8-9 months to get the fruition, literally, of what you started 9 months ago, and then feel what true satisfaction feels like, and true fulfillment feels like. It's not that instant gratification you get from buying something on Amazon or watching a funny TikTok that goes in the flash of a
Yeah.
And if you're able to impart that and get people to slow down and take a bit of time out and feel what true fulfillment feels like, you get rid of that emptiness that I think a lot of us feel. And I'm guilty of it as well. I've had that. I never get as much fulfillment as I do with things that take time and effort to accomplish. And whether that's growing something, whether that is growing a YouTube channel, or what I do for a job. I didn't get successful overnight with what I did.
That's
it was
right.
a lot of time and effort that went into it. Here's a little anecdote. Somebody that I worked with a little while back, somebody that was a graduate, came into the workplace, and we had a 3-month probation meeting to see how they were doing and all that. And we went into the meeting, and I had some things to say to them that, maybe this could improve, but, ultimately you're doing well. They came into the meeting asking when they're going to get a raise.
Right.
And I'm like, sorry? This is before I even had a chance to talk about how they had performed or whether we're going to continue with them, because that's the whole point of the probation period. And they were asking, when are they going to get a raise, and, how long should they wait before they're going to get promoted? I'm like, you've only just started here. You've barely done the onboarding, and you're already talking about that. Come on. But it made me realize I think it's expectations that are set by, just people in general, maybe
sure.
the community in general. But it was a bit mind blowing to me. It's the expectation that things need to happen right away. It needs to happen now. And if not, they were hugely disappointed. We got to the end of the meeting. I think they were ready to quit. They ended up not. They stuck around for a while, thankfully. But they were ready to quit because they felt, they were being hard done by. I'm like, come on. It didn't make sense to me. I came out of that meeting, I felt like I was in the twilight zone. But it just goes to this whole point.
Yeah.
People, I don't know I don't think a lot of them, and I'm not saying this from other people. This is my own family as well. I have nephews, and I can see just how they are. That when they're watching TV, they're not just watching TV. They'll have a laptop on the one knee, they'll have a tablet in the other knee, and they'll be watching TV as well. They'll never be doing one thing.
Yeah, there isn't that focus, and there isn't that patience, and you're right. Gardening teaches us and allows us to practice some of those, I think, beneficial
But you
things
you
in
have
our life.
grandchildren,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you see it. They sound like wonderful kids,
Oh yeah.
but I'm sure you can still see it
Oh, yeah.
where it's like I feel bad for a lot of kids that they don't get to have that sense of true fulfillment.
Well, and so I helped develop a pretty big school garden program, and so I saw that with preteens in school, and I see it with my own granddaughters that in their daily life, you're right. There's all these electronic intrusions into their day, and so I have seen when these same kids get into the garden just by being surrounded by plants, it's automatic. They don't have to be told to slow down. They don't have to be told to have patience, and they have focus. It's almost like nature has this intrinsic programming in our beings that when we get in a setting like that, we just naturally enjoy it, and it does allow our world to really make more sense. And I just loved getting the kids in the garden. It's just so difficult now with all of those obstacles to actually get kids, to get anybody into a garden and giving themselves the opportunity to relax. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to focus. It's okay to enjoy just being outside with nothing else going on.
My favorite messages to get or emails, and thankfully I've got a few of them, is when I have, it'll be a 9-year-old or even a 14-year-old that'll message me and want to show off their chili plant.
Yeah.
And that just gives me so much joy. You know, it's just to see that they're doing something a bit different. They're so excited about the fact they got a little chili on their plant, and it's like, that's awesome, and I hope they continue doing it. But being able to have that influence on youngsters is just amazing. And it's not going to reach everybody. I mean, we look at the demographics on our channels.
Yeah.
It skews on the higher end.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, I do have, and I'm sure you do as well, I have families that'll watch some of my episodes together in front of the TV on a Friday night when I release my video. And I love that. I'd love that they're sharing that experience together, but also that the kids are taking an active interest. It's lovely.
Yeah, and it does move in an unexpected direction. So at the school, I would give the students free packets of seeds anytime they wanted the seeds, and I had a number of parents and grandparents that would come to me, and they were not gardeners, but because their son or their grandson was so passionate about the seeds,
Share that interest with.
they wanted to share the interest, and they developed the interest as well. And they were asking for seed packets. And so we often think it comes from the adults downward, but I've seen it work in the reverse direction and still be effective.
It's awesome. Well, we talked about YouTube a little bit. Obviously, that's how we met.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know my listeners, they enjoy hearing a little bit behind the scenes of what goes on. When did you start your channel?
So I actually started my channel about 12 years ago, and just did a few videos over a few years. Wasn't really serious about it, just kind of trying it. I actually had a blog at the time, the Gardener Scout blog, which I no longer do. But that was my primary focus, and so I was beginning to supplement that with YouTube, and then took some time off to build gardens and to move and to do those kind of things that life throws at us. And so I really became focused on YouTube about 11 years ago. And that's when I started working at the school garden. Now, I became a Colorado Master Gardener just over 20 years ago. So in 2004, I became a Master Gardener and I began teaching community classes and working in the Master Gardener program. And I was learning and practicing gardening at every opportunity. But 11 years ago is when I started working at the school. And like a lot of gardeners out there, went to YouTube to help me because this was 24,000 square feet of growing space with nothing in place. And so I had to figure out how to grow food for the school. And ultimately, we had 105 raised beds, 4 feet by 8 feet, each of them, a few dozen fruit trees, a dome greenhouse, 42 foot in diameter. And that was all developed over a period of years with volunteers. I had never gardened at that scale. Even though I'd been teaching gardening, it was not at that scale. I thought YouTube would have the answer, and I found that it didn't. And much of what I found on YouTube all those years ago was not only inadequate, but often inaccurate. And that's what really, really got me into making the videos, making research-based videos, making videos with the accurate information. And I could demonstrate what it was that I was promoting, whatever technique or method, or talking about the types of plants or about soil. And then I just got hooked and started because I wanted to make some videos that my students could refer to. And I saw that there were other people in the world that were actually watching my videos and learning from them and liking them. And so I started making more videos, and then got on a regular schedule of a video a week. And then I started doing 2 videos a week. And now I've got over 500 videos all of these years later, and more than 400,000 subscribers. And that continues to grow. And it's essentially my retirement job, where I'm a YouTuber.
Your grandchildren must be proud of their granddad.
They are. They particularly when they occasionally I'll have them in a video, and so they like to show off to their friends that that they're on a video that's been seen by thousands of people. But they also just are aware that I'm doing something that a lot of grandparents aren't doing, and they
I think
really
it's a
like
shame. I mean, I'm biased because he's my dad, but my dad's stories and that, when he does pass, I don't want those stories to disappear. I want to know about them. I asked him a few years back to just film himself on a webcam, just chat, just talk. I'd love, even if it's just for me. I mean, I was thinking, it's a YouTube channel. Some of the stories and anecdotes and knowledge that he has, people would love to hear. But even if it's just for me, it gets lost. And there must be so many people that are retired that just have so much knowledge to share. And maybe that's another channel maybe we can start at some point together, teaching retirees how to get onto YouTube. Imagine the amount of knowledge that disappears every year when these people pass.
Well, and I admit I'm a bit selfish in that regard. I do make videos, even though they're intended for a greater audience. The underlying message is directed at my grandkids, or it is directed at my daughter or my son, and often it's directed at me. I'll make videos just to document what's happening in the garden, so that I can remember what it was I did. The time may come where I don't remember a particular project as well, and I go back to some of my own videos to just remind myself of what I was doing 10 years ago with some of these things at the school in particular. And so I'm not sure how many YouTube creators take that approach, where we are leaving a record of our life in our videos. And so we should try to put part of ourselves into our videos for those that we hold dear.
That was the hardest part, I think, for me. I'm I'm naturally an introvert, as much as people don't really think so, because I'm on YouTube and you see my personality come through. But the biggest challenge for me when I was starting YouTube was putting more of myself into the videos, because I'm a private person as well, and you feel like you're exposing yourself. And that kind of shifted, which is why we were looking at some of my videos this morning, and the approach I take, and my tone of voice and the excitement levels and that sort of thing. I'm way more not confident, way more comfortable with being on the camera now, because of how I've changed the perspective of what I'm doing. I'm not putting out a video for 1 million people. I'm putting out a video for one person,
Right.
whoever I'm focusing on at that time. I'm teaching my wife something, or I'm showing her something, or this is for my brother. Yeah, and I try and put that focus in, and it just comes across as better. It's a little tip for people that are doing YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Don't make a video for millions of people. Make
That's
a
right.
video for one, and it'll be a lot easier, and you'll be far more comfortable doing it. But yeah, it was also a record for me. When I started doing my garden updates, I would do 12, 13, 14 videos of these garden updates each year, going throughout my entire season. I knew it was never going to be popular, and they aren't generally, because I'm rambling in a lot of them, and I'm just talking about, hey, my plants have come up, that's great. Oh, they've got a bit of a problem on this one. Selfishly, that was for my own reckoning.
Yep.
And for two reasons. One is just to see what was going on in the last season, but number two is also, like every gardener, and I'm sure you have the same things, like, shouldn't I be expecting better growth now? Let me have a look at what happened last year. I look at last year, like, oh wait, actually it's exactly the same. No, we're fine, because I know in 2 months' time, if I look at these videos, then I'm going to be in a better position. So just documenting that for yourself, that gives you that level of confidence and just reassurance sometimes.
Exactly. Every video doesn't need to be a viral video
No.
for you to have a successful channel.
It'd be nice to have more than one, though.
It does help to have a few videos to help elevate your channel, of course. But a lot of people, we talked a little bit about this yesterday as well, that they'll start a channel expecting a lot of
Instant
views
gratification.
and a lot of
right?
exactly.
They'll give up in a month.
And after 3 months, they do a review of themselves and give up on it. No, it's a long-term struggle in some cases to keep the videos happening and to keep it going, hoping that you'll have that viral video. And it might happen, it might not happen, but when you look at the reason you're making your videos, whether it's as a personal record, or whether it's to share with family, whether it's to educate someone else, or whether just to show somebody what you're doing in the garden. We all have different purposes. And as long as you hold true to yourself and you maintain that purpose and that you're happy doing YouTube, it's so much easier to keep doing YouTube when you're enjoying what you're doing.
And that's the big trick, because I've had moments, and I'm sure you've had moments where it becomes a bit of a slog. And that's normally when you're chasing the algorithm, or you're chasing, you need more views. Oh, the last few videos haven't performed very well. I need to make a better video. I need to make a video that's going to get the views. Those are my worst.
Yeah.
Those are the videos I hate making.
Yeah.
I want to just share what I'm doing and do the best job possible, help people learn a few things. That'd be great.
Yeah.
We're talking about, because I'd be remiss to forget my mom in this conversation. Obviously, my channel is also talking about cooking and making hot sauces and that. My mom, she's my inspiration for starting cooking. I mean, she taught me from a very young age what pairings of spices and herbs go together, and what meat goes with what veg, and all these flavors and profiles. And she taught me the palate that I have. And she's not going to ever make YouTube videos, and she's never going to go and record herself. But what she has done is she's done this multiple times now. All the recipes that she's done in her time, things that she's learned or ideas, she's gone and written them all down. I've got some beautiful books that she's written out. Actually, I should show you after this. There's one. She's also a fantastic artist as well. So she's illustrated it, and it's just stunning. But I think she gave us a gift when Caroline and I got married, or maybe it was one of our anniversaries. It's just it's a box with recipe cards. It's all these recipes.
Well, that's wonderful.
And yeah, passing down a legacy, whether you're doing it on YouTube or whatever, I think it's so important to do that. You can't explain that to a young person because you couldn't have explained that to me 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But as you get older, you realize just how much knowledge gets lost every year. And with the age of AI, people think, well, what do we need that knowledge for? We've got AI. It's going to tell us everything we need to know. Yeah, and about 7 half truths for every 2 facts you get. So that makes it tough. But so your channel, let's go back to that. So that 12 years ago was when you started your channel. And I know the milestones that I hit that got me really excited. The first big one, which probably was even more exciting than when I had 100,000, was when I got 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first 100?
Well, so I really don't because, I started the channel 12 years ago. I actually uploaded a few videos before that point. I just don't really consider that the start of the channel because I didn't have any focus. But even at the 12-year point, I still had gaps of months between videos. So I wasn't even aware of analytics. I was just uploading some videos, and so no, I honestly don't know when I hit the 100 mark because I had just put some videos out there and really wasn't tracking it. It wasn't until I got to the 1,000 subscriber mark, which was a number of years. Again, that instant gratification that people think they can expect, and that's kind of how I categorize the start of my channel, because that's when I really started paying attention and I started making a few more videos, and that was about the 11 to 12 year point. And suddenly I had one of those videos that took off. I wasn't even aware of it. I just got a notification one day about this video doing so well on how to make sauerkraut. And it was approaching 100,000 views out of nowhere. And that's what really piqued my interest. And coincidentally, I had like 950 subscribers. And so I started learning a little bit more what it really meant. And I found out 1,000 is an important threshold in YouTube. And I was watching and pushing and telling everyone I knew to subscribe. And I do remember when I crossed that threshold of 1,000. And that was kind of, for me at least, my birth into YouTube.
So I'm on Reddit quite a lot. I don't know if you go there much, but there's a subreddit called YouTubers. So I go on there often. I'll try and give advice. I don't normally expose who I am, but I've been doing YouTube for a while now, and I love to help these guys out, especially when there's a genuine interest to put out lovely content and do something interesting. But what I've seen happening is that what you're talking about, that instant gratification, the hitting the 1,000 mark. I see these comments on there. I started my channel 3 months ago or 6 months ago, and I'm only at 1,500 subscribers. I just feel like I need to give up now. I'm not going anywhere with this. And I'm sitting there thinking, it took me 1.5 years to get 100 subscribers. Yeah. And I was over the moon. I couldn't believe there's 100 people that are interested in seeing what I'm doing. That's amazing. Yeah. I put out a thank you video. I remember I think it was my 7-pot brain strain yellow hot sauce video. And I remember in the beginning, I was like, guys, this is amazing. 100 subscribers. It's awesome. And then it snowballs a little bit. I got to 1,000 subscribers in about 6 months. And then, I had little jumps and starts where, you have a big jump up to 10,000 and 100,000. And it's just, you're so grateful for all of that, but it was more exciting for me to hit those lower numbers than it is what I'm getting now. And it's not to say I don't appreciate every subscriber that comes in, but it does change the way you approach things. Sure. For me, you start, I think we're both in a similar boat. You just constantly want to put out the best thing you possibly can, technically and informationally. And you put more and more effort into every video. So, I put a ton of effort into the earlier videos. You wouldn't know it by watching them, but believe me, I was still learning how to edit. I was learning how to be in front of the camera and that sort of thing and do the audio. But a video today, that's 2-3 day process for a basic video. And when you put that much effort in and you don't see those views getting to where, you think they should be, it can be disheartening.
Yeah.
So it's not the subscribers I'm looking at, it's looking at, the effort I'm putting in for each individual video.
Yeah, I like to make videos that follow the entire process. So, for instance, I have a garlic video that took almost a year to put together because I show how I select the garlic, how I plant the garlic, how the garlic grows over the course of the winter, all the way to harvest the following summer. And I have one with strawberries that are the same way. I have multiple videos that literally take a year to shoot and ultimately edit and then release. And sometimes they do well and sometimes they don't. But it's what we want to do. We want to put in that effort, that even if it takes 3 months to do a video, and then we actually get to that point where we are working the actual release. Yeah, that's another couple days when you're talking about the editing,
All the thumbnails
and the thumbnails, and then releasing it. And so it's real easy to sit and watch a 8 or 12 or 20-minute video and not realize just how much effort went into it.
I think if you're not doing YouTube yourself, or if you've never done like video editing or anything like that, I don't think you can truly appreciate just how long it takes. And it's not just for us. I mean, some of these folks, like we talked about Tony from Simplify Gardening, that's how we started talking, him and myself, is because I commented on I recognized the amount of effort he was doing. And I only recognized it because I'd been watching his videos for a while, but I only recognized it once I started doing my own YouTube videos.
Right.
And I used to watch his videos and I'm like, how are you doing this? You're putting out a video or two every single week. And I know he doesn't have an editor, especially at that time. I don't think he has an editor now. But he was just putting so much effort into these videos, the amount of B-roll, the change in shots and all this sort of thing. And it's just nice to acknowledge it. And it's purely just because I was amazed, because I was like, how do I achieve that level of quality?
And now you know.
Yeah, I just put in a lot of time and effort and don't have a social life. Ignore your wife for a while and yeah, you're fine. No, it's easy to complain. And that's not what I think we're doing here. Is,
oh, no, not at all.
I love what we do. And I love making these videos. I love putting them out there. And yeah, it's disappointing if you've put a ton of effort into a video that doesn't get a decent number of views. But for me, it's not really about the views, it's about the response to it.
Exactly.
Because the views coming can be quite arbitrary. Maybe your thumbnails didn't stick out well enough. The content might be great, but so what? But it's great to get, it's great to know that people are getting value out of it. And sometimes when you feel like it didn't reach the audience that you think it should have reached, that's when it can be a little disappointing. So you've been in the UK now for the last 2.5 weeks.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah, 2.5 weeks.
So what have you been doing? What has been the highlights? What have you learned, and will you be coming back?
So yes to all of the above. I flew into Edinburgh and spent 5 days in Edinburgh with my friends Eli and Kate from In the Garden with Eli and Kate on YouTube.
I haven't watched that one.
So we've done a lot of collaborations. We've really become good.
General gardening as well.
General gardening, a good focus on greenhouse gardening because they're in Scotland. And so we spent 5 days touring some gardens, went to Anwick Gardens in northern England and saw the poison garden. That was a nice exposure. I don't know if you know about the poison garden, but it's a walled area. It's a beautiful, beautiful garden, multiple gardens, but one section is fenced and gated, and all the plants inside are toxic or poisonous. And
there's something similar down this way where it's like a herb or spice garden, but all the herbs and spices and all the flowers are deadly, some nightshades and
yeah, it's
like
the same kind of thing. So that was fun and learning a bit about that. But then their own garden, just they have a typical UK garden out their back door, and it's just beautiful. I actually included some of the photos of their garden in my book. It just, I love their garden, so I wanted to see it, and I got that opportunity to visit with them. And then from there, I then drove around Scotland myself, seeing different castle gardens. I really enjoyed the Gordon Castle walled garden, which is one of the largest walled gardens in the UK.
So when you say walled garden, as in literally a wall.
As literally an 18, 20-foot tall wall that used to be part of the castle, and then an expansive garden space inside. And what they're doing with trees, espalier trees, pruning of the trees, I've never seen trees on that scale, thousands of trees that are sculpted in this walled garden. And so that has been a great inspiration for me to take back. And then some of the, like Stirling Castle, for instance, outside Edinburgh, just going to the Queen's Garden, which is very small, but and smaller walls, but still a walled castle garden. But you can see how it was a space for the Queen to walk through and just have some peaceful time. So did those type of things. And then from there went to Wales and saw Tony from Simplified Gardening, and his garden is a typical allotment. And so I'd never actually stepped foot on an allotment before. I've learned about allotments. Tony and I have made collaboration videos, but it's a wonderful garden that Tony has. So we sat in his garden and enjoyed that space, and I learned some different things of how he's doing it. And then I went to RHS Malvern, the Spring Festival, last weekend.
That must have been pretty impressive.
It's
one of the biggest ones, isn't it?
It's the first of the season, and it's a big one. And we have nothing like that in America. We don't have that.
Is it not the interest for it?
We don't have the interest as a nation. And so the episode of Gardener's World last week was on Malvern. And so I love Gardener's World, but we don't have anything like that in the States. We don't have any primetime gardening shows, and we don't have any.
We have lots of them.
I know. And we have no gardening celebrities to speak of, and we have no massive shows and festivals like that. So first time I'd ever been exposed to anything on that scale, and it was fabulous. And so a whole day, and met a whole bunch of YouTubers that's what they do every year. Is they go to Malvern, and at the end of the festival, they all meet up. And there must have been 20 of us that were all meeting up and chatting over a period of time. So that was marvelous, of course. And then,
did you get any recognition while you were there?
Oh yeah, almost all of them know me.
No, not the YouTubers, but just people that were at the show.
There were a few that
they're like, I think I know you.
But it was part of it because I was walking with Tony, and so I think they initially would recognize Tony, and then they recognized me with Tony. Okay. But even some of those YouTubers knew me from YouTube. So that was.
I can still go incognito when I'm at the chili festivals, but there's a few people that like, isn't that ChilliChump? Yeah. So I make sure to wear a ChilliChump T-shirt now, just so that I invite. They can come say hello, because a lot of people will be able to.
Oh, I love
There's probably tons of people that would have seen you and recognized you, but thought, I don't want to bother him.
Yeah. And I talked about this in my live stream. Whenever I encounter someone who stops me and says hi, I give them a shout out on the live stream. Each week I'll say, I was at the market and Bill came up to say hi. So I want to say thanks to Bill because he stopped and we chatted for a little bit. So I love meeting people on the street who recognize me from my videos, and I love talking gardening.
Makes it real, doesn't it?
It really does. And I think you see some of this as well. There's the assumption, particularly for those of us that have the bigger gardening channels, that we are somehow above an average gardener, and that's so far from reality. We are just regular gardeners who have been plodding along making videos about our gardens. And so anytime someone stops and wants to talk gardening, I'll talk much longer than
I learned so much from the folks. We just did a trip up to Belgium, and I've met this chap before. He's one of my viewers. and he came up to Belgium with us. He actually spent the weekend with us doing this trip, and I keep learning things from him. He works with certain hydroponic systems that he's developed himself, like hybrid systems, and I'm learning from him. And I learn from a lot of my viewers.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just because I happen to put what I learn up on YouTube doesn't make me any better or whatever. It just makes me different, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So Melvin, then from there, where
And then from there came to London and did Kew Gardens and have walked around to all the little enclaves throughout the city. If I see trees, I duck through the gate to see what it looks like. And then here today with you. And after having seen your garden and walking through your beautiful greenhouses and your landscape, it's all just been so enjoyable. And it really is educational because I've been filming it to take back with me ideas. But exactly to your point, I learn from every gardener I meet and from every garden that I visit.
I think it's a lesson in life. You know, it doesn't matter how much you think you know. Actually, the less you think you know, the better, because that means you're willing to learn. The people that think they know it all, you're closing yourself off
They know
to
the
new
least.
experiences and new knowledge. And yeah, it's always good to learn. I'm always open to it because I mean it's only going to benefit me. So,
That's right.
yeah. So wow, that's a busy trip and a lot of different things. You didn't just do the same thing. I mean, like my garden's completely different to Tony's
Oh, yeah.
and Eli's and a bit different to Kew Gardens. So
A bit.
Kew Gardens is amazing. It's incredible. The Palm House, I think it is. It's the oldest greenhouse there. It's so big.
And that's where I began because that's the image you always see when you see an image of Kew. It's the Palm House, and that's where I began, and that's actually where I completed after doing a very wide
It's a big place.
circle walk through the garden. And I didn't even see the pond. So when I first walked up to Kew and I went into the Palm House and walked through the Palm House, and then hours later, when I was coming back to the Palm House, I came through the broad walk, and there was this big pond with a fountain in front of the Palm House. And that was a discovery. I love discovering things in a garden, even though they might be huge. If you don't see them the first time and you stumble across them, that's again one of those little things, those little special moments where it's a different photo opportunity, a different chance to sit and watch the ducks or the geese or the swans, and it's just fantastic.
Kew Gardens is one of those places you could visit 5 times, and each time you'll be able to find something new every time. There's lots of little nooks and crannies and little hidden walkways and things like that. It's lovely. I love it. It's been a while since I last went. The last time I went there, I think they just opened the Diana Memorial. So I don't know if it's still there.
It is still there. I didn't go through that section. In fact, part of that area, the Temperate House was closed, so I actually didn't spend much time. I think that's where the Diana Garden is in that general vicinity.
The last time I was there as well, they had a greenhouse dedicated just to chilies. And yeah, I think it was in the same greenhouse where there's massive lilies in the middle.
Okay.
But then they had chilies all around. And that was good fun.
Yeah. The Lily Pond.
Lovely.
Lily Pond glass house is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you've been lucky with the weather as well. It's gotten a bit grey today. Typical British weather, but the last few weeks
it's
have
been
been
fantastic.
stunning.
Yeah, I did go to the Isle of Skye as well, and
Okay.
and drove through that area, and the sun, lack of rain, it's been fantastic.
So we're going to have to do a live stream, I think, because you do a weekly live stream on a Monday, but I think it'd be great to have all the people you visited, like Tony, myself, Eli, and Co, have this on a live stream later on in the year.
That is part of my plan once I get my growing season actually growing, and spend a lot of time in the summer. So during my active growing season, my live streams tend to be focused on
What you're getting up
answering
to.
questions, because a lot of gardeners, something is going wrong and they want to hear an expert give them the answer. So I spend a lot of time during the summer just answering a lot of questions on my live streams. And then when things start to slow down a little bit, that's when I like to have guests on. So you'll definitely be on again.
Yeah.
And Tony's been on a few times, and Eli's been on a few times, and they'll be back on again.
I love being on live streams where Tony's a guest and I'm a guest, because we end up taking the mickey out of each other every time. But no, it'll be fun, I think, and it'll be nice to have the whole group together.
Yeah.
We can maybe take the mickey out of you a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely the people that are listening to the podcast, go check it out. A weekly live stream that takes a lot of work, but it's very informative. I've listened to a few now, and if you want to learn some more or just immerse yourself in some more gardening tips, I think it's a great one to listen to. So go and subscribe to that. And talking of guests, if you are interested in being a guest on the ChilliChump podcast, or even the live stream, but more so the podcast at this point, get in contact through chillichump.com/contact. And you don't have to be a YouTuber or anything like that. If you just growing chilies, or you have something interesting to say, or anything like that, just get in contact, and we'll have a chat and see if maybe we can have you on as a guest. It'd be nice to broaden things out, because this is the second season of the ChilliChump podcast, and still trying to find our feet. First season we tried a whole bunch of different things, and some hit, some didn't. We'll be definitely having Mrs. ChilliChump on the podcast again, more often, and we'll get my brother on and maybe a few other people from the family. But yeah, if you are interested in becoming a guest, then let me know, chillichump.com/contact. And Scott, thank you so much for your time today, and also coming to visit. It's been awesome getting to know you better, and I'm looking forward to seeing the videos that you're going to be releasing. You've got a ton of editing to do when you get home.
I have a ton of editing. It's been great being here, Sean. And just to confirm, yes, I'm actually sitting at the table with you doing this podcast. And so it's wonderful to have
nice
this
doing it in
opportunity.
person, because I do lots of interviews and things like that, and it's always virtual. And I enjoy doing them, but it's a little bit different than having it in person. So it's been really great, and great to meet you, and like I say, get to know you as well. So
it's been fun. Thank you.
Excellent. And we're going to be taking you back to the train a bit later on. And you've got one day left. There must be a bit of mixed feelings there.
Yes, I'm, as with any trip, any holiday you go on, it's enjoyable, but as you get closer to the end, you're ready to go home. I'm ready to see my dogs and see my plants and see my family and
see some sunshine, hopefully.
See some sunshine and get back to real life.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again. And to everyone listening, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you again on the next podcast. And until then, stay spicy.